Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. Hi. Okay, that was too weird. Sorry. Veil. Oh, hey, hi, didn't see you there. Welcome to Epic Church Online. We're so happy that you could join us today. The quarantine continues. We don't know for how long, but we are excited that we can experience community together. And today we have an amazing time together. Sundar will be sharing a message of hope, something about buying a Ford car. I'm not sure, wasn't listening. Anyway, here's a couple things just to keep you in mind. Just want to mention prayer. Just want to mention that we want to come together as a community and really be praying for our medical personnel. They're on the front lines, they're working hard. Some in our community actually work in this field, so we want to be praying for those. We want to be praying for the families that are affected with this tragedy, and especially we want to be praying for those small business owners and some of our families that are suffering economically. And so please join us in prayer, and if you have a prayer request, if you have an experience you're going through, please share that story with us. You'll find more details in the newsletter. Some upcoming events that we have are, of course, every week. If you're smaller than this, that's some of you, you get a bedtime story. And our bedtime stories are being read by all sorts of people. There's a puppet involved in one of them. What? Yeah. So you want to get that bedtime story again in the newsletter. Thursday, 8 o'clock, there's a Bible study. We're going through the book of Joshua. It's all about courage. It's all about what's happening right now. So you don't want to miss that. As well as there is a women's Bible study, which sounds pretty interesting, but apparently I can't join, but women can. So women's Bible study, more details in the newsletter. And I'm just going to give you a sneak peek that we are planning a very special program. It's going to be in a secret location. That's all I can say. I've said too much. Okay, stay tuned for that. And the last thing I just want to mention is we're completely online, which means that if you regularly contribute to Epic financially using real money, using bills, it doesn't work anymore. And so we encourage you to give online. That's the only way. We still want to do ministry. We still want to move forward. We want to come out of this more united, with more prayer, with more passion. So once again, welcome to Epic Church. The bathrooms are in your house. Use them as often as needed. Thank you.
Did you feel the mountains tremble? Did you hear the oceans roar? When the people rose to sing, Jesus Christ, the risen one. Did you feel the people tremble? Did you upon injustice. Come on. give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. You give light. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth, and all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Sing great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, yes, Lord. So we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. Yes, God. Sing great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord. Great worship you. You are here in this place. I worship you. I worship you. Waymaker, miracle work, promise keep, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle work, promise keep, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, yeah, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you, yeah. You are waymaker, miracle work, promise keep, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle work, promise keep, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 That is who you are, yeah. That is who you are. Oh, yes, Lord. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop. Waymaker, yeah. Waymaker, miracle work, promise keep, light in the darkness. Oh my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keep, light in the darkness. Oh my God, that is who you are. 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 Come on. That is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are, yeah. That is who you are. Oh, yeah. who you are. It's who you are. God Almighty, you make a way. You make us.
Wow, good morning, everybody. I want to thank the worship team for the amazing job that they did. Brandon, you and your team, I don't know how you guys do it, but it was so great. I want to welcome everybody at home, and I'm going to welcome everybody through every camera. Hi, welcome. Welcome to Epic. If this is your first time, hi. All of the cameras at the back, welcome to Epic. Hi, this camera, the Hero 4. Hi, and then also the one in the back. Here we go. Hi, welcome to Epic, everybody. All right. Woo! So, for the past few days, Moses has been telling me to come up with a sermon, and we're in the movie life, and I'm just so excited to bring this message to you guys today. I've got a little bit of coffee, feel right at home. I want you, you're waking up, you can smell that coffee. Just take a quick seat, relax. If you're on your couch, if you're watching us from your phone, if you're on your laptop, whatever it is, maybe you're driving. That's distracted driving, so please don't watch and drive. But we just want to welcome you to Epic Church, especially in this time of physical separation. So without further ado, let's have a prayer here before we start. Dear God, I just want to thank you for the blessings that you have given us in this week, Lord. And we ask that although we may be physically apart, we are not socially apart, Lord. And I just ask that you help us keep in touch with each other and with your word, and just keeping up with our relationship with you, of course, too, Lord. And I just want to ask all these things in your holy and most precious names. All right. So we weren't allowed to play the trailer, but it should be linked in the description. And if you got a second, I want you to pause this and go watch the trailer, because the movie that we're going to be talking about today is Ford versus Ferrari. And man, what a movie this was. I watched this a few months ago when I was going back to the movie theater quite a bit. And I liked this movie so much. I thought it had a really great message. I kind of like watching the sports and the car movies, and it had all of that. It had the speed, it had the sound of just tires going against the pavement and just engines revving, and it had so much excitement. And I liked it so much that I actually bought it. And I bought it because I wanted to watch it over and over again. And then came the time where Moses said, okay, we're going to do a movie life, and I want you to choose a movie where it can resemble somebody's life, that you can use it and apply in your normal life. And I thought, this is a great movie. It has such a great message. So that is the movie that we'll be discussing today. But to go along with that, obviously we're going to have some Bible application. So the story that we'll be looking at today is probably one that everybody knows. You've read it. I think as far as I can remember, I've read this one since I was a kid. It's one of the earliest ones I remember, and it's probably the most referenced one in movie culture today because it tells such a great story. And that is the story of David versus Goliath. That's right, David versus Goliath. So we're going to begin here reading in 1 Samuel 17. I'll read from the New Living Translation. So if you have your Bibles or you have your phones or whatever it is, the new things that the kids are doing these days, just whip it out. We're going to start reading from 1 Samuel 17. And once again, I'll be reading from the New Living Translation. So I'll give you guys a second. And, just once again, I just want you guys all to feel very comfortable. I always, I was having a blast. Obviously, I miss everybody and all of the Epic family. I miss you all. I miss seeing all of your lovely kids. And but it was kind of nice. It was kind of nice to sit at home for a little bit and see everybody through the screen. After not seeing them for so long. And I was cozy and everything. So I just want to invite you again to be as cozy as possible. We're going to have a great time here looking at the Word. So 1 Samuel 17, it says, "The Philistines now mustered their army for battle and camped between Soka in Judah and Azekah at Ephes Dammim. Saul countered by gathering his Israelite troops near the valley of Eli. So the Philistines and the Israelites faced each other on opposite hills, with the valley between them. Then Goliath, a Philistine champion from Gath, came out of the Philistine ranks to face the forces of Israel. He was over 9 feet tall. He wore a bronze helmet, and his bronze coat of mail weighed 125 pounds. He also wore bronze leg armor, and he carried a bronze javelin on his shoulder. The shaft of his spear was as heavy and thick as a weaver's beam, tipped with an iron spearhead that weighed 15 pounds. His armor-bearer walked ahead of him, carrying a shield." Verse 8, "Goliath stood and shouted a taunt across to the Israelites. 'Why are you all coming out to fight?' he called. 'I am the Philistine champion, but you are the only servants of Saul. Choose one man to come down here and fight me. If he kills me, then we will be your slaves. But if I kill him, you will be our slaves. I defy the armies of Israel today. Send me a man who will fight me.' When Saul and the Israelites heard this, they were terrified and deeply shaken." All right, so I just want us to think about that for a little bit. That's absolutely bizarre, isn't it? Like, can we just picture this for a second? You're just reading those first few verses. First of all, this guy Goliath is 9 feet tall, all right? So it's like I am about 5'4", right? That's on a good day, all right? All you doubters out there, that's on a good day. And he's 9 feet, so he's basically double my height, I'd be looking at him like this, like, okay, all right, And his armor and his sword almost weigh as much as I do. Okay, like that is nuts to me. Like, are you kidding me? So here you have Goliath. He's scaring everybody out of his boots, and he's literally, if you can imagine, there's just like a clearing. This is how I imagine it. There's a clearing, and there's all these little tiny army men, and all of a sudden Goliath walks out, and he says all this scary stuff. Like, who's gonna challenge this guy, right? And like, how many people have ever seen somebody that is 9 feet tall, okay? Like, I watch basketball, all right? I know some of you at home watch basketball. Like, those guys are 7 feet. Those guys are 7, like maybe like 7'7", whatever. Like, that would be probably the tallest guy. But come on. And not only is he 9 feet, but he's also a warrior, right? And he's this crazy tall warrior. He's got all this armor loaded up to him, so much that he has his armor bearer in front of him and is just carrying all this stuff for him. All right, so enough about Goliath here. Let's talk a little bit about the movie that I chose today. So the movie that I chose was Ford versus Ferrari. And that in itself, the title itself is Ford v. Ferrari. So you see that and you're like, oh, okay. When I first saw the trailer and I saw the title come across the screen, I'm like, okay, this sounds like a battle is going to happen. Like a boxing match is going to happen. Like a wrestling match for some of fans. Tom, I know you're a wrestling guy. Like something like that is going to happen. And the beginning of the movie starts in 1963, and the Ford Motor Company decides that they would like to buy the legendary Ferrari company. So they send representatives up to Italy to meet with the owner himself, Enzo Ferrari, and they have a good meeting. It all goes well. They're like, we would like to buy your company. and, just have a joint merger, and we'll just all work together, la-di-da. But the catch with it was Enzo. Yeah, so Enzo, we don't want you to race your cars anymore. We don't want you to race the fastest cars at the time. They didn't want them to race in this crazy event called the 24 Hours at Le Mans. And it was, like it says, a 24-hour race. There was multiple drivers because they'd be switching off. And for the last few years, Ferrari was dominating this. From 1960, they started to dominate this. And they went back and back and back consecutively up until 1965. They dominated the 24-hour Le Mans, which has never really happened before that time. It was always kind of like a mix. There would be this company here, there'd be another one. So, of course, after Enzo hears this, he's insulted by it, and in the movie, he kind of rips them a new one. And he's like, no, you can take your puny little Ford company back to that puny little place in America and whatever, and you can tell that guy Ford the second, who's not even as good as the first Ford, his father, you can tell him that I don't want anything to do with it. And this ends up actually driving the price of his company, and Fiat actually buys him. And they say, you can have total control over the Ferrari company. So for Ferrari, it was a win-win. They were always on top. So then Ford's representatives go back to Henry Ford II, and they say, hey, he basically insulted you, said you were this and that, like you're nothing, what's your puny little American company, you make ugly, slow cars, stuff like that. And this is where Henry II has enough, and he's like, you know what? We're going to build a supercar. We're going to do something that has never happened before, and we're going to beat Ferrari. We're going to beat Ferrari. We're going to build the fastest supercar. So to do this, he's like, okay, how am I going to do this? And his team, at the time, there was a talented car maker by the name of Carroll Shelby. And if any of you know cars, Carroll Shelby is a legend nowadays. He makes the Ford Shelby car. It looks like a Mustang, but it's much faster and it's more powerful. And they ask him to design the Ford GT. All right, everyone. So that's just a little bit of background knowledge of the story, and we'll get back to it later. But first of all, let's go deeper into the story of David and Goliath. So we're going to continue here in verse 12. So verse 12 says, now David was the son of a man named Jesse, and Ephraite, I'm sorry if I don't pronounce him properly, from Bethlehem in the land of Judah. Jesse was an old man at the time, and he had 8 sons. Jesse's 3 eldest sons, Eliab, Abinadab, and Shimea, had already joined Saul's army to fight the Philistines. David was the youngest son. David's 3 oldest brothers stayed with Saul's army, but David went back and forth so he could help his father with the sheep in Bethlehem. For 40 days, every morning and evening, the Philistine champion strutted in front of the Israelite army. One day Jesse said to David, take this basket of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread and carry them quickly to your brothers. And give these 10 cuts of cheese to their captains. See how your brothers are getting along, and bring back a report on how they're doing. David's brothers were with Saul and the Israelite army at the valley of Elah, fighting against the Philistines. So David left the sheep with another shepherd and set out early the next morning with gifts, as Jesse had directed him. He arrived at the camp just as the Israelite army was leaving for the battlefield, with shouts and battle cries. Soon the Israelite and Philistine forces stood facing each other, army against army. David left his things with the keeper of supplies and hurried out to the ranks to greet his brothers. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, came out of the Philistine ranks. Then David heard him shout his usual taunt to the army of Israel. As soon as the Israelite army saw him, they began to run away in fright. Have you seen the giant, the men asked? He comes out each day to defy Israel. The king has offered a huge reward to anyone who kills him. He will give that man one of his daughters for a wife, and the man's entire family will be exempted from paying taxes. Oh man, would that be so great. David then asked the soldier standing nearby, "What will a man get for killing this Philistine and ending his defiance of Israel? Who is this pagan Philistine anyway, that he is allowed to defy the armies of the living God?" And these men gave David the same reply. They said, "Yes, that is the reward for killing him." And when David's oldest brother, Eliab, heard David talking to the man, he was angry. "What are you doing around here anyway?" he demanded. "What about those few sheep you're supposed to be taking care of? I know about your pride and deceit. You just want to see battle." "What have I done now?" David replied. "I was only asking a question." He walked over to some others and asked them the same thing and received the same answer. Then David's question was reported to King Saul, and the king sent for him. All right, so before we pick up in David's story, let's go back to the movie again. So we were talking about how Ford had just been spat on by Ferrari, and they're thinking of building a supercar, and they enlist Carroll Shelby. And Carroll Shelby, for all that he is, he actually won the Le Mans in 1959. He won it outright, but he had some back trouble, and he had some other physical trouble, so he couldn't actually race. So he had to assemble a team of racers. And everybody knows that every team has the ace up their sleeve. They have their guy that they know is going to carry them to that victory. And for Carroll Shelby, that was Ken Miles. And Ken Miles was not a face that the people liked, especially Ford. They're like, this guy is, he's rash. He makes the snap decisions. He kind of does whatever he wants. In the movie, he sometimes gets angry. He was throwing things at people. Just a guy that seems to not have something set together. And he has a failing mechanic business, so he was really needing this, and his family was really needing this. But he just had so much pride. He was so proud, and he knew that anything he put his mind to, he could get to it. So Carroll Shelby enlists Ken Miles, and he says, "Okay, I'm going to get you to race for me. I'm going to get you to race this Ford GT." And Ken Miles laughs at his face. He says, "All right, how long did you tell them that you said you would be able to do this in? Did you say 100 or 300 years?" And then he starts laughing, and then Carroll Shelby tells him, "No, it was just 90 days. And see, to them, this was something that was impossible because Ferrari dominated the racing scene. They've dominated race after race. They have the best cars. Their cars look nice. Everybody wants a car like it. Nobody ever thought that Ford would be able to have a racing car. And what happens is they build this car together with blood, sweat, and tears. They put in everything. A lot of things go wrong. Ken Miles almost dies because of an accident with the car where the brakes fail, and still they end up getting to the Le Mans. And by this time, we fast forward to 1966. And like I said, from 1960 to 1965, it's just been Ferrari dominating. They've been dominating it. And finally, Ford thinks, okay, this has got to be the car that's going to take us to beat Ferrari. And they start at the 24-hour Le Mans, and they're doing it. They're doing really good. Ken Miles is leading the way. He's breaking records. He's setting new ones. He's just going all over the place. And slowly, Ferrari is dropping out of it. Their cars are breaking down. Their drivers too tired to go, and they're making mistakes. And it comes to the end, and he has to make a decision. He's still setting records, and he's coming to the end, and Ford says, signal all of the Ford cars to finish first, second, third. We want to see a nice finish. So don't pass them together. We want them to finish all side by side together, something that was never done before. And by this time, it was near the end of the race, and Ken Miles, he's a racer, he's a competitor, he wants to win, and he wants to be first. And he's telling them, no, I'm not going to do that. He's telling them, no, I'm not going to do that. And then Carroll has a discussion with him, and he says, I think we got to do this. I think we got to do this for everybody because it looks nice, because it looks better that way, because this is the giant slowly and surely finally falling down. This is the Goliath that is slowly falling down. So then Ken Miles agrees to it. They go together, and he doesn't even end up finishing first. One of his partners end up inching ahead of him, and they pronounce the race to him on a technicality. And that was the end of the story in the movie. It ends like that. But Ferrari never won again for quite some time. After that year, Ford won for 4 consecutive years at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And so we go back into the story of David and Goliath. So pick up with me here in verse 32. It says, "Don't worry about this Philistine," David told Saul. "I'll go fight him." "Don't be ridiculous," Saul replied. "There's no way you can fight this Philistine and possibly win. You're only a boy, and he's been a man of war since his youth." But David persisted. "I have been taking care of my father's sheep and goats," he said. "When a lion or bear comes to steal a lamb from the flock, I go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from its mouth. If the animal turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. I have done this to both lions and bears, and I'll do it to this pagan Philistine too, for he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine." Saul finally consented. "All right, go ahead," he said, "and may the Lord be with you." Then Saul gave David his own armor, a bronze helmet, and a coat of mail. David put it on, strapped his sword over it, and took a step or two to see what it was like, for he had never worn such things before. "I can't go in these," he protested to Saul. "I'm not used to them." So David took them off again. He picked up 5 smooth stones from a stream and put them into his shepherd's bag. Then, armed with his shepherd's staff and sling, he started across the valley to fight the Philistine. Goliath walked out toward David with his shield bearer ahead of him, sneering in contempt at this ruddy-faced boy. "Am I a dog," he roared at David, "that you come at me with a stick?" And he cursed David by the names of his gods. "Come over here and I'll give your flesh to the birds and wild animals," Goliath yelled. David replied to the Philistine, "You come to me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Today the Lord will conquer you, and I will kill you and cut off your head, and then I will give the dead bodies of your men to the birds and wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. And everyone assembled here will know that the Lord rescues his people, not with the sword or spear. This is the Lord's battle, and he will give you to us." As Goliath moved closer to attack, David quickly ran out to meet him. Reaching into his shepherd's bag and taking out a stone, he hurled it with his sling, and he hit the Philistine in the forehead. The stone sank in, and Goliath stumbled and fell face down to the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with only a sling and a stone, for he had no sword. And David ran over and pulled Goliath's sword from his sheath. David used it to kill him and cut off his head. So I really like this story. It's just such a good story. It's used a lot, let's say, but to me, it's the perfect one for movie life. And there's a few things that I wanted to highlight and take away with it. The first thing is you have to believe that it is possible. See, when the story started, the Israelites didn't believe that it was possible to defeat Goliath. They feared him as soon as they laid eyes on him. In fact, if you were to rate how much they actually believed that they could kill him on a scale of 1 to 10, it was probably a 1. And then David comes along with all this belief in his head. You know, on a scale of 1 to 10, he seemed like he was at the 10. They were just at opposite ends. And it wasn't even an issue for him to challenge Goliath head on and take him down. Not to mention the fact that he was offered a sword, a shield, chainmail, everything that you would need to fight this sort of battle, and he turned it down. He strongly believed that he could defeat Goliath with his shepherd's staff in his hand and his sling in the other. See, without a strong belief, whatever you're pursuing, if you don't believe that it isn't possible, then you'll fail. You'll quit on yourself before you even get halfway. You know, you can think of times where you're believing in yourself, you know, maybe for all the married couples out there or the couples that are together. Think about the time that you're going to ask that person out. What if you didn't ask them out? What if you didn't believe that you had a chance? Where would your life be now? Because you need to have self-belief. You need to believe that you are strong enough. You need to believe that with God, you are more than strong enough. And if you don't believe that, you would quit on yourself without even making a move, without even making a decision. And the next one ties in sort of with this. It's that you have to be bigger than your fears. You see, there's 2 times a day, in the morning and the evening, Goliath would come out, and this was for 40 days. He would come out, he would show himself, you know, almost like an arena, just taunting everybody, knowing that none of them were going to fight him, knowing that all of them were too chicken to come out and even challenge him. And he's saying, come on, give me a one-on-one battle. All of them were terrified. All of them were terrified. And none of them would dare challenge him. But as soon as David heard, you know, that there's a reward in it, that it was for his people, that he was doing it for God, he said, I can do this. I can defeat this guy. None of them can do it, but I can do it because I know that I have God. And I don't have to fear this 9-foot-tall guy because I know that my Lord is with me. So that's why when David confronted Goliath, all he had was 5 stones. All he had was a little sling. And not to mention that, well, I don't know how tall David was, but if I'm thinking he's my height, it'd still be very scary to stand up to a guy like Goliath. And not only that, he knew that he was bigger than his fears. He knew that Goliath was the least of his fears, to be honest. See, if you're not, you'll end up settling for things that are less than your fears. You'll end up succumbing to things that you shouldn't fear. And we do this all the time. We end up seeing something and we try to be lost in it. We try to be lost in the fact that maybe we won't accomplish it. And we become enslaved by our fears. And this has happened to me quite a few times too. You know, there's something, I remember quite a time when I was in school, you know, deadlines were my worst nightmare. And it was my biggest fear. It was my biggest fear because I knew that as soon as I handed in something past the due date, I would be losing some sort of percent. I would be getting a lesser grade than I knew what I had. But I didn't want to turn in something that was only partially completed. And I always was surprised by this, is that a lot of teachers are very forgiving and fearing the deadline. They were always saying, I can't get it done. I won't be able to do this. We need to be bigger than our fears. The last one. Don't underestimate your capabilities. Don't underestimate yourself and what God can do for you. When you underestimate yourself and what you can do, you end up achieving less. Friends, you end up achieving less. And judging how Goliath looks and appears compared to David, and sounds, you would think that Goliath was the superior one. But the outcome of the battle turned out to be a lot different than all of the Israelites expected. David did not underestimate himself or his abilities. He had self-confidence, and he knew that God was on his side. At the end of the day, he knew that God would be able to win the day. See, it doesn't matter what you think and where you are. You're capable of much more than you believe. You just have to give yourself a chance. You have to give God a chance. Because if anything, oftentimes we're overestimating. And that's not a bad thing, because if you're overestimating, then you'll end up giving more. And maybe you'll end up doing more of what is expected. And you'll end up achieving more and reaching more potential in the process. But oftentimes, what we think is our Goliath isn't really a Goliath at all. It's something that we can accomplish by being a David. By picking up 5 stones and slinging them at the Goliath in front of us. And a lot of people think this has to be physical. It doesn't. There's so many weapons that God has at his disposal for us. We have prayer, we have scripture, we have friends, we have preachers, we have family, and we have the ability to stand up to that Goliath. And see, I really like David because I think out of all the people in the Bible, me personally, I can relate to him the most. All right? You got a guy, he's the youngest guy in his family. He's the smallest guy. He doesn't have the most glamorous job. He's taking care of sheep. And he's just a common guy like anybody else. But he still ends up being the hero of the story. He still ends up being God's champion. And I like David because I can relate to him. And in a specific story that I wanted to bring up, obviously, I've brought these stories up before, but I did play soccer for quite some time. I loved soccer. It was so fun. But as you can tell, I'm not that tall. I'm not that tall. But I always thought that me being short would be an issue for soccer or any sport in general. And it was one day in a tryout that my coach told me something. This is what he said. He said, "Look, Sundar, I know you're the smallest guy on the field, but you see all these other guys that are bigger than you. If you're stronger than them, if you're faster than them, if you want to work harder than them, then it doesn't matter how big, how small, how skilled you are, you can be better than them. You can overcome your fears." And that was something that always stuck with me. And I always thought of that. Every time I went out on the field, I said, okay, I can't beat the bigger guys, but I can still try my hardest. And if I try my hardest and I believe I can do it, then maybe I'll have success. And wouldn't you know it, I had pretty good success. So, as we wrap up here today, here's what I want everybody at home to take away. As you sit at home, as you go about your life, and until we meet again, where we can physically talk and express and everything, here's what I want you to remember about David versus Goliath. You can be bigger than your fears. I know a lot of us right now are going crazy with everything that's going on. I look at Facebook and it's just a mess. I don't know why I do it, but I see a lot of fear in Facebook. And I see people turning on each other and saying things, that are crazy. And, it has me very worried. But I don't want all of you guys at home to accept that fear. To accept the fear that the world has on us right now. And not even beyond that, because this will all go away eventually and we'll be together again, but we'll all still have fears in our life. I want you to be bigger than the fears in your life. I want you to never underestimate what you can do for yourself and what God can do for you and what together we can do as a community. Because if there's one thing I know, if you believe in him and if you believe that there's no size of Goliath, there's no any kind of person in the world, there's no kind of obstacle that can stop you, then anything is possible. Believe in your potential. Believe that there is a place where you can succeed. And as we go and we leave, I just want everybody to do a little exercise with me here. And, you know, this is something that I find when I'm at work, when I get too stressed out with everything, it really helps. It's super simple. I want you to close your eyes right now. Everybody at home, close your eyes. Take a deep breath and breathe out and say, God is with me. Let's do that again. Let's take a deep breath and breathe out and say, God is with me. And I want you to do that every time you think that you're not enough. Every time you think that your fear has a hold on you, know that God is the one that is holding on to you. As David said, the battle belongs to the Lord. He's already won it. He's already fought all the fights that we need to. We just have to utilize what God has given us. Let's pray together. Dear God, I want to invite you into everyone's homes, Lord, into everyone that is listening, and just be with them, Lord. In this time of worry, in this time of fear, God, we just want to ask that you are the calming voice that we listen to above all else, Lord. When people are whispering things to us, when people are telling us that we're not enough, don't let our fear control us. Let the brighter days come, Lord. Let your power reign over us. And let us understand that you are enough. God, I just ask that as we all go our separate ways, Lord, that you wash over us until we meet again, Lord. Keep us healthy and keep us trusting in you, Lord, that you will carry us through. In your holy and most precious name I pray. Amen.
Just one word, you calm the storm that surrounds me. Just one word, the darkness has to retreat. Just one touch, I feel the presence of heaven. Just one touch, my eyes are open to see. My heart can't help but believe. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a mountain that he can move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. Just one word, you heal what's broken inside. Just one word, you revive every dream. Just one touch, I feel the power of heaven. Yes, we do, Lord. Just one touch, My eyes were open to see. My heart can't help but believe. No, there's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a mountain that He can't move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. No, there's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a prison wall He can't break through. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can do. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There's no power like the power of Jesus. I will believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There's no power like the power of Jesus. I will believe for greater things. And there's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. And there's no power, no, there's nothing that our God can't. A mountain that He can't move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. Oh, there's nothing that our God can't do. Not a prison wall He can't break through. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that